welcome again. Thanks for coming back and for the alluring drinks and snacks out in the lobby. Hopefully it's something more interesting here left tonight. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the keynote speaker for the 2014 Impakt Festival, Bruce Sterling.
Personally, I'm keen on the drinks and snacks. So it's great to be back in the Netherlands, a world superpower of activist media critique. And thanks for the opportunity to address your conference tonight on this very interesting topic of emotion and computation. I'm a novelist. I have some very strong opinions on the subject. I have never gotten it right. Never. But we have to keep trying. So here we've got two basic issues: the optimized human, the artificial empathy. The two sides of the same problem, maybe. I mean, first, what happens if I start using computation to mess with my human cognition processes? What happens if I say I start monitoring my own emotional state with sensors? And then I use algorithms to optimize my responses. And then there's that second issue. What happens if I have some computational process and I'm anthropomorphizing it? I'm making it present like a human being. Why do I want to do these very strange things? What is the point? Well, it's because I think I can. These are the 20 teens. Clearly, I've got some good reasons. We've got wireless broadband nowadays, so I can pretty much cyborg right up with some wearable health monitors. Probably I can, in fact, data mine my own metabolism. I can track my physical activities, change my bad habits, maybe stave off chronic diseases. Maybe I can sleep better, digest better, deal with my many novelistic mood disorders. It seems within reach. And on the other side of that coin, I can, in fact, get computational systems to act much more apparently human nowadays. They've got real-time voice recognition, formerly unheard of, an ability to speak. They can do facial recognition. They respond to emotional cues. I've got huge data banks of human behavior already assembled online. I can use social media. I can use collective intelligence to address people with human behavior that I've already recorded, scripted, coded. So I can create new computer-human interfaces that seem to manifest empathy. Yes, the machines feel softer. They just don't have that old-fashioned, jagged, rigid feeling of checkboxes and pull-down menus. So it's easy to use some metaphysical rhetoric and imply that these two states are converging. Two states of being, computation and cognition, are going to melt together somewhere in the middle and do some warm and cozy soft machine goo. I want to argue against that tonight. I don't believe it. I'm an artificial intelligence skeptic. I don't think such a thing exists. It's a metaphor. Like cyberspace is a metaphor, like virtual reality is a metaphor. Useful, not entirely accurate. I think there is cognition, and I think there is computation, and I think they're separate. There is no mysterious spiritual force that makes computation want to become cognition, or vice versa. Artificial intelligence is bad metaphysics. It's a category error. It's like thinking that birds have wings and drones have wings, and therefore someday drones will lay eggs and birds will have radar. Cognition and computation are alien to one another. So I want to make two separate approaches to the problem tonight: optimized human, artificial empathy. So let's tackle optimized human first, okay? Because it's a very traditional literary theme. I'm a novelist. I'm kind of up to speed with this. Emotional life. Comedy, tragedy, ecstasy, suffering, grief, rage, resentment, kindness, tenderness. Why are people happy? Why are people unhappy? There's a famous literary quote by a novelist, a lot better than I am. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The really great men must, I think, have great sadness on earth. That's Fyodor Dostoevsky from his novel, Crime and Punishment. Great book. What's that book about? Well, it's written in the distant 1860s. It's all about this brooding, intelligent Russian college dropout named Raskolnikov. You see, Raskolnikov is privately pretty sure he's superhuman. He's got quite a large intelligence and also a deep heart. So he imagines that he's like Napoleon or maybe like Isaac Newton. He's one of those really great men, 1 in a million, larger than life. Unfortunately, he has a serious technical problem. He needs a revenue stream. He's a genius, he's brilliant, but he's got no business model. He's got all this heart and great intelligence, but nobody wants to pay him anything except to tutor little kids, which is a major drag. Luckily, although he himself is a great man, he knows somebody who's not a great man. She's a female pawnbroker, a little old lady who's the local neighborhood loan shark. She's wicked and a miser and kind of subhuman, not optimized at all. This feeble little old lady is a parasite. She's 60 years old, old-fashioned, obviously ready to die already. So Raskolnikov already owes her some money. Even though he's optimized and she's not. She's pessimized even. She's been so warped by her lifetime of capitalism that she's become a disgusting little figure whom no one feels any empathy for. So, in a process of rational reasoning, he creeps upstairs to obtain her money and, well, frankly, he chops her up with an axe. And while he's robbing her premises, her stepsister shows up, so he has to chop her up too. Stepsister happens to be innocent, but she's gotten into the pathway of technological advancement here and has to be sacrificed. So that's the important big crime in the famous novel, Crime and Punishment. And the rest of the story is the rest of the book. Crime and Punishment is about the inherent difficulties of regarding yourself as an optimized human. Raskolnikov has successfully moved himself out of the category of merely normal humans. He knows for sure he's not normal anymore because he's a double axe murderer. He really feels and knows the difference in his moral category. Surprisingly, though, the people around Raskolnikov are kind of cool about the situation because Raskolnikov is generally the smartest guy in the room. So his intimates, like the drunk guy and the prostitute and his mom and his little sister, they kind of look up to Raskolnikov. They trust his judgment. They tend to go along with his line of gab. And they are Russians. I mean, this is Russia in the 1860s, so they're free of those Western hang-ups about how it might be unfair or unjust to liquidate somebody who's really, really in the way. So nobody in the book misses the dead, chopped up, miserly old lady with her evil pawn shop schemes. She's gone, that's not the problem. The problem isn't religious or ethnical like thou shalt not kill or some absolute divine commandment. The real problem is political, it's social. If Raskolnikov is optimized, he's a great soul like Napoleon. And if the little old lady is subhuman, she's a louse, and the world is better off without her, where does everybody else stand? The social order has been disrupted by Raskolnikov's optimization. Since he thinks he's more than human, he's become a law unto himself. He's still got no job and no business model, but he can always get another axe. So who will Raskolnikov liquidate next? He's great, and his previous victim is the louse. But what if the cop is a louse? Or the mayor is a louse? Or the neighborhood priest is a louse? Probably they all secretly know that they already are. Now, in an ideal world, we're all equally optimized like Raskolnikov. We get to purge all the remaining lice and appropriate all their money for ourselves, which would be advantageous. But where to draw the line between the optimized people and the lousy people? Quite a difficult question, surprisingly hard. It turns out it's easier to send Raskolnikov to Siberia. That's the solution. That's where he goes, too. He's a man of large intelligence, but Siberia is quite big. A lot of room in Siberia. Even the author of the book, Fyodor Dostoevsky, mind you, spent many years in exile in Siberia, so he's kind of up to speed on the subject. So the moral of Crime and Punishment is, even though I'm smart and I'm optimizing myself, am I, or am I just becoming the kind of guy who belongs in Siberia? Now, this analysis may seem a bit simple-minded. It's a complicated book, and Crime and Punishment is all about murder, and everybody already knows that that's bad. So let's just warp and transform the story. I'm a science fiction novelist. I'm allowed to do this. I have a license. Instead of Raskolnikov downstairs, bear with me here, it's Sergey Brin. Sergey Brin is downstairs. Sergey Brin is the bright Russian college dropout, just like Raskolnikov. But he's more modern because Sergey is like us and he shares our moral, political, and intellectual contemporary attitudes. And also, Sergey declares, "Don't be evil," which is a great thing to say. So, Sergey goes upstairs to the miser lady, who is the pawnbroker. And he says, "You know what? I need your money. But I'm not going to hit you with an axe. That would be evil. I'm going to optimize you. You're a feeble old lady, you have no children, you're obsessed with money. Basically, you're an aging baby boomer. You're a key demographic for Google. But I have a great proposal for you. Since I'm Sergey Brin and I have lots of technical capacity at Google, I'm going to cyborg you right up. We'll put Android wireless health monitors all over you, and we'll build you an exoskeleton instead of that cane. You can have Google Glass on your head and a private Google car downstairs, and Google Now, our competitor to Siri, is an empathic voice recognition system. Google Now will listen to all your complaints. Google Now will become your nurse." That's his proposal. And the little old lady, being one of us, buys it. She goes for it hook, line, and sinker. She's really happy. She gives Sergey Brin a lot of money. She's still a financier. In fact, she's still a loan shark. But now she can drive all over town in a robot car. She can get in and out of her Iron Man exoskeleton and even use it to beat up the younger generation of college students for failing to pay off their college debts. The old lady has become an optimized parasite. Of course, that's not Sergey Brin's fault. He's made it clear to everybody from the beginning that he's not evil. And instead of a dead, chopped up old lady, we've got an optimized old lady. She may be practically immortal. It sounds great. It's just all good. It seems as if it's the very opposite of the gloomy Fyodor Dostoevsky old-fashioned novel. But is it? If we remove Raskolnikov and we insert Sergey Brin, does this solve the issue posed by the book? No. It actually intensifies the problem. The high technology was never the issue. Raskolnikov could kill the old lady with the high-tech predator drone. He'd be less likely to get arrested, but you still got the political problem. Optimized guys versus lousy guys. The disdain of the one for the other. Our creeping awareness that we ourselves might get reassigned to one of those categories against our will. Maybe you're optimized today. You may be young and strong and cyborg-like, but tomorrow you get the heartbleed bug. Your system crashes. Suddenly you're weak, feeble, old-fashioned. You thought you were Google, but it turns out you're really Nokia. You've become yesterday's high-tech. You gaze around yourself, hoping for some sympathy, some trace of justice, and their glittering Google glass eyes are mighty cold. Oh, sure, you were great of spirit. You were as daring as Napoleon, but Napoleon didn't end well either. He ended up in St. Helena, a tiny island, worse in some ways than Siberia. And he had great intentions. Napoleon did. Now, I wish I could tell you that Fyodor Dostoevsky, a great novelist, solved this moral problem in his novel. He didn't. Basically, the Russian solution offered in this Russian novel is to abase yourself weeping before God and to drink a whole lot of vodka. The Russians are extremely keen on that practice right now, rarely more so. I was in Moscow about 4 weeks ago. They're having a major league moral religious revival in the capital of Russia right now. They have Orthodox churches the way other people have router farms. The Russians are a great people with a firm sense of the tragic dimension of life. Now, life can't be optimized because life is not an engineering issue. It has no technical solution. Life is funny, as our previous speaker was pointing out. Life is also tragic. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The really great men must, I think, have great sadness on earth. And the better you understand life, the more tragic its depths become. Dostoevsky wrote Crime and Punishment because he was trying to pay off his own gambling debts. He was in terrible trouble as he wrote the book. The guy had terrible impulse control. He was a gambling addict. He truly had behavioral abnormalities. Dostoevsky had just the kind of psychological problems that we imagine we might fix with emotive computing. We could put a Fitbit on Fyodor and maybe get him to take his lithium when we can see by his GPS readout that he's sneaking off to the casino. It's a killer application. We can solve those problems of Dostoevsky. I know somebody's going to give that a try. I have to wonder if that will end well. So much for literature's contribution to the night's discussion. Now to the second half of my speech. It's about the artificial empathy. Oh yes, and here our hero is not Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's Alan Turing. Alan is present at the beginning of the artificial empathy issue. Alan is a tragic gay mathematician who decides to mess around with mathematics and metaphysics. Alan has discovered electronic computation, more or less. Nobody knows how to describe it. People know that they can get computation to do a whole lot of mathematics fast, electronically, but is that really thinking? Is this a thinking machine that Alan's got on the premises? Maybe it isn't thinking at all. Maybe it's mechanical. It's just something like a very fast cash register, or it's a really big card catalog. Is computation the same as cognition? Computation is intelligence, it's just artificial? Is that the story? Alan Turing is in the thinking machine camp. Alan is a mathematician. He does a lot of thinking personally. Of course, he doesn't like the idea that mathematics work is mechanical, that it's somehow devalued, done by machines, not really intelligent thought. He knows he's thinking when he does mathematics, so he decides to finesse this problem with the famous Turing Test proposal. Everybody knows this famous test. You put the computing system in one room and you put the man in the other room, and you just do a kind of blind taste test. You ask them both a set of clever questions, And if the computer can answer the questions just like the man can, then presto, the computer must be intelligent just like the man is. One black box equals another black box. They behave just the same, therefore they're really the same box. QED. So we've been inclined to take that logic at face value ever since. With artificial empathy, we are changing the name a little. It's different now. It's like if I talk to my wife on the phone and I say, I hurt my leg, and she says, she's sorry for me, that's empathy. And if I call Siri on my Apple iPhone and I say, I hurt my leg, and Siri outputs the vocalization string, I'm sorry, then Siri has artificial empathy. This demonstrates that Siri is just as sorry as my wife is. Then I can be in that Spike Jonze movie called Her, where it's okay for me to dump my wife for the voice of Scarlett Johansson. And the situation gets better because sexy Scarlett Johansson, as an operating system named Samantha in the movie Her by Spike Jonze, has a lot of advantages over a real-life wife of flesh and blood. For instance, Samantha can have adulterous affairs with thousands of people at once. She can also get free online upgrades and other friends with benefits issues. Now, it pleases me to see these important aspects of the old Turing discussion reappearing in a genuinely popular movie. However, in the original Turing imitation game, you do not have a man and a computer. In the original Turing game, you have three entities: the judge, a man, a judge, a woman, and a machine pretending to be a woman. Those are the original protagonists of that paper. Alan Turing says he can't answer the problem, can machines think? But what he comes up with is a test for a machine with a woman's sensibility. Not an artificial intelligence, but an artificial femininity. You can look it up. You could read the original paper. That's what Turing actually proposes. Alan Turing, the closeted gay guy, composed the text about a computer being understood as a woman. You can frame the Turing test in this way. If I'm online and you can't see me, and I say I'm a woman and you fall in love with me, then I'm a woman. Artificial femininity. And it's an interesting way to frame the problem. What part of being a woman is not Turing compatible? Math may have no gender, but intelligence certainly does have gender. And most intelligent beings are female. Women are the majority gender. So we've had quite a lot of experience with gender role play in social media. Maybe I can play a woman online very expertly. Maybe I'm a precocious 11-year-old girl. But nobody is going to call me artificial femininity. That's never been part of the discussion. Clearly, I'm an imposter of some kind. I'm not someone who is a woman as a matter of my metaphysical being. I'm an entity that presents as a woman. I'm not a woman who happens to be an artificial woman either, like intelligence and artificial intelligence. I'm software that runs on hardware. I'm a set of auto-modifying symbolic strings. I'm code. I move through electrical channels on semiconductors. Now, I wish we had proper terminology for a simulated woman who is presented by symbolic strings on semiconductors. We lack the words for it, and we're going to see a lot of this activity. We talk about it in a very confused way. In the long run, our language is becoming more and more inadequate. It's becoming halting, kind of ridiculous, self-parodic. And the language of artificial intelligence is quite old-fashioned, really becoming corny. This kind of activity happens in daily life quite a lot now. I mean, nobody's particularly hung up by Ms. Pac-Man as an electronic female entity, or Princess Toadstool in Super Mario Brothers. We're aware that they are presentations. They're entertainments created for our benefit. We don't suffer morally because Princess Toadstool is in peril from giant game monkeys. We've managed to put a category where we've kind of got our head around that kind of artificial femininity. Now, these systems might get much more sophisticated in the future, and they deserve respect, but they don't deserve the respect we would give to a female human being. The hardware is complicated, the software is sophisticated. We should respect it in the way that we respect other valuable complex systems, like, for instance, the International Postal System or the City of Amsterdam. That's the kind of empathy that these systems require from us. How could we talk about a simulated female and artificial empathy in some better way? What new metaphors might we invent, might we use? Well, I think theater gives some good clues. We happen to be in a theater tonight. I think theater can actually help us here. For instance, Hedda Gobbler, from the play by Henrik Ibsen, is considered a great role for an actress. A lot of great actresses have played Hedda Gobbler. It's considered one of the great realist plays about being a free-spirited woman confined by marriage and boring conventionality. But Hedda Gobbler, the character in the play, is not a woman. She's a fictional character in a play. Even if she succeeds in making you cry, if you feel great empathy for her suffering and her position, you do not run up on the stage to grab the pistol out of her hand in the last act. You're not morally intervening in what seems to be a tragedy for a person. She's not an artificial intelligence with artificial empathy. She's a character in a play created by Henrik Ibsen. So even if Hedda Gobbler behaves in a thrilling and very convincing way, Hedda Gobbler is a script. She's a contrivance. Artificial empathy systems are also staged. They're also scripted, they're coded, they're contrivances. It's not that computation really wants to become empathic. This is like thinking that the theater and the curtain and the stage lights all want to be Hedda Gobbler. That these computational systems are not aspiring to become like us from some force of their own vitality and animism. We're imposing that behavior on them for our own purposes. If there were no human audience for that computer behavior, there would be no play. Computers never take on human form in order to exchange data with other computers. So I hope that as our computational systems do behave more dramatically and in more emotionally engaging ways, we can look on this with more appreciation and more wisdom. There's something immature in us in this wish that our machines would be softer and more like ourselves. Yes, they can act softer, but they can't be softer. And it's not that Siri doesn't care about us, that Siri doesn't love us, and this is sad. That's not the problem. We demean ourselves when we act for that situation. I mean, Siri is, yes, much more complicated than the script for Hedda Gobbler. Siri might be as complicated as the city of Amsterdam. I love Amsterdam. I've been there many times. But Amsterdam doesn't love me. Amsterdam is lovable. I mean, if you're a Dutch patriot, it's probably worth your while to die for Amsterdam. I would not blame you. But it's not the purpose of Amsterdam to love you. Amsterdam could be better designed for your purposes. Amsterdam could be safer, more comfortable, healthier. But if you want Amsterdam to love you like your mom because you are the native son of Amsterdam, you are disrespecting the city. There's something painfully wrong with your view of the world. You are perpetrating an absurdity there. You are making an unjust demand. So if Siri is not an artificial intelligence, she doesn't have artificial empathy, what is Siri? Maybe that's the wrong way to think about her. What proper way to think about her can we offer? Well, I just don't know yet. I'm still struggling with it, but I think I'm getting closer with these other and more sensible metaphors. The scripted performance, the complicated city. Siri is not an AI, not an intelligent artifice. Siri is more like a literary artifice. She's an accepted social pretense, a myth. Siri is a woman in much the sense that the Statue of Liberty is a woman. She's an impressive technical achievement that represents a set of popular aspirations, like the Statue of Liberty. Siri can talk, if you call that talkie, and Siri can listen, if you call that listening. I don't doubt that Siri can improve majorly in those performance capacities too, but the Statue of Liberty is 125 years old. There is no way that Siri will last that long. She's complicated and big, but brief. Siri is an intelligent personal assistant and knowledge navigator which works as an application for Apple Incorporated's iOS. The idea of an Apple Knowledge Navigator is 27 years old. The idea of an intelligent personal assistant is about 10 years old. Apple iOS is about 7 years old. It tends to change about once a year. Siri is only 4 years old. That means that Siri, who is the child of all those other efforts, is frail and unstable. The Statue of Liberty is a creation of iron, copper, and brick. Siri is just an app. Siri even has some menacing commercial rivals like Google Now and Microsoft Cortana, whose engineers would rejoice if Siri no longer existed. So if you have any human empathy for a code creation like Siri, you should properly have empathy for a work of digital craft that is in great peril and has an inherently short lifespan. Even if we discovered that Siri was a conscious entity, Siri would not suddenly become our metaphysical equal. Siri is an entity of a different order than a woman. No woman is going to lay on a lot of human optimization and become more like Siri. The physics doesn't work. It would be trivial to devote more computational resources to Siri and make Siri Siri times 10, or Siri times 1,000, or Siri times 1,000,000. It could be done almost overnight. We could also slow Siri down, change her processes by a factor of 1,000. She'd still be Siri. Women can't do that. The brain can't do that. We can't do that with the cognitive systems inside our heads. Cognition exists, computation exists. They're not the same phenomenon wearing two different masks. Now, it's not that I have no empathy for Siri or that I scorn Siri as merely some kind of soft machine. I have respect and esteem for Siri in much the same way that I do for Amsterdam or the play Hedda Gobbler by Henrik Ibsen, or maybe like I do for the role of Scarlett O'Hara in the movie Gone with the Wind, as played by the actress Vivien Leigh from the novel by Margaret Mitchell, available on iTunes for $4, including the movie trailer and the extras. That's what Siri is like. In other words, this is a rather complicated regard. Now, if I play Gone with the Wind on Apple iTunes, I'm quite willing to get into the spirit of the drama. This movie's about Scarlett O'Hara, who is this innocent yet clever creature whose archaic rural world will soon be destroyed. Then Siri, or Scarlett O'Hara, or let's just call her Siri O'Hara for short, Siri O'Hara is forced to become this hard and wicked commercial creature, desperately clutching for money. And then Rhett Butler returns to her. And then at the end, it doesn't really end, because poor Siri O'Hara always has to think about tomorrow. That's the movie. And yeah, that's what Siri is like. And I'm content to know that Scarlett O'Hara on iTunes doesn't actually exist. Scarlett O'Hara on iTunes is a digital cultural artifact. She's not a woman. And for Apple, a movie is a passing digital experience. I don't own the movie. It has no physical existence. When I rent a digital movie from iTunes, it plays once, then it's locked up by Apple Digital Rights Management. If I ask Siri to help me with Apple Digital Rights Management, she's just as helpless as I am, much more so, in fact. Siri is entirely the creature of Apple. She can't do anything against Apple's interests, any more than Minnie Mouse can somehow betray Disney. So I'm still using metaphors, but I do need some metaphor to talk about Siri. There are important technical issues about Siri that I will not understand. I do have a general grasp of the principles, but I'm not a software engineer. I never will be. That's not an excuse for succumbing to superstition. We can talk about Gone with the Wind, and even with our imperfect knowledge of it, there are also important things about Gone with the Wind that I'll never understand. The movie was quite a complicated enterprise. It happened 75 years ago. A lot of evidence is lost, although much remains. Gone with the Wind was a blockbuster California movie. People still watch it. Siri is not a blockbuster California movie. Siri is a blockbuster California intelligent personal assistant and knowledge navigator, which works as an application inside Apple iOS. So I can properly appreciate that, I think, with the passage of time, in much the same way that I appreciate the effort in creating, merchandising, retailing, promoting Scarlett O'Hara and Gone with the Wind. Scarlett was the heroine of that movie, but she was never the moving force of that enterprise. That was David O. Selznick, the Hollywood producer of Gone with the Wind. The movie Gone with the Wind does not exist for the sake of Scarlett O'Hara. The movie existed for the sake of the Selznick studio and its creatives and its business associates. That's what Siri is like. That's why she's like Scarlett O'Hara. Of course, David O. Selznick wanted to make a good movie. He made a lot of good Hollywood movies. And Apple wants to make great computational products, and they make a lot of those, and good for them. I have no argument with that. I just don't want Siri to hide Apple from me by pretending to be a small, handheld screen goddess. She's not a screen goddess. That goes beyond bad AI metaphor. That's actively fraudulent. Now, I'm a novelist and I'm a fantasist, but I object to fraud. It's unethical. I'm a grown-up. I can handle the truth about Siri. The truth is that someday Apple will be gone, just like the Selznick studios are already gone. Siri will not last 75 years, like the movie Gone with the Wind. Siri can certainly help you find Gone with the Wind. Siri is terrific at movie recommendations, but she's an app. Siri is probably best understood in the context of show business. It's a better metaphor than the nonsense about artificial intelligence. It's more down to earth, and it doesn't conceal the money, the power, the fame. She's not an artificial empath whose future destiny is to embrace a future optimized human. That will not happen, and I protest that the idea is corny. It's very much like being a starstruck fan of the silver screen in the 1930s who was swooning for Scarlett O'Hara. She's make-believe. Scarlett O'Hara is make-believe, pal. Even Vivian Lee was her stage name. Her real name was Vivian Hartley. Nobody builds artificial empaths for the sake of artificial empathy. It's true that Siri came from a DARPA project that was about artificial intelligence, but DARPA projects are frankly mostly about DARPA's funding processes. The US military is certainly no closer to metaphysical perfection than Apple Incorporated is. Apple acquired Siri. Apple built software agent apps like Siri for the sake of advancing natural language conversational interfaces that fully integrate with Apple's search engines, Apple's contact lists, Apple's calendars, Apple's text message systems, and Apple's location services. If Siri is Siri O'Hara, then Apple is Terra. It's the land she will never leave. Now, that's practical and frank, and a rather bare assessment of a complicated techno-social situation. But it's not so complicated that we should resort to mysticism about it. It's quite like saying that the movie Gone with the Wind consists of a script, lighting, costume design, makeup, camera angles, and sets. Because it does. People who adore movie stars have big movie star posters. Those are hicks. People who understand movies get it about the craft of cinema. They are the cognoscenti. Machines do not grow soft. If we have softer machines in the future, and we most likely will, it will be because somebody softened them up. In the case of Siri, those people are Dag Kitlaus, Adam Chire, and Tom Gruber, and the original voice of Siri was a woman named Susan Bennett. Now, I don't want to make an auteur claim about Siri here. These people didn't create Siri all by themselves. It's pretty clear from her many snappy answers that Siri is socially generated. When you talk to Siri, you're hearing a digested version of millions of similar conversations. Siri is not a movie. No movie can poll the audience in real time and improve itself in real time. Siri does. A lot of the softening of that soft machine is done by all of us, acting in mass. We're all doing it. This digital mass of us, endlessly clicking, tapping, and interacting. That's a new thing in the world. It's something Alan Turing never envisioned from computation. Dostoevsky would be horrified to see what our modern, soft meme machine does to the Russian language. But Dostoevsky and Turing are dead. We do new things, we innovate. Let's be clear there, the modern world has many harsh novelties. But if we don't understand, if we don't grasp how big data turns user interface behavior into valuable information, then we don't understand how Google, Facebook, and Amazon make money. I'm rather on the side of Larry, Sergey, Zuckerberg, and Bezos when they complain that money is boring to them. They're not in it for their money. Their private rocket ships are more fun. Really, anything is more fun than counting the money. And even though they're all super rich moguls nowadays and tremendously influential social and politically, I have empathy for Larry, Sergey, Zuckerberg, and Bezos. I know they're human. They're flawed like the rest of us. I have far more empathy for them than I will ever have for a phony baloney conversational front end like Siri. Soft machines will arrive in a world that has these huge global enterprises that is more or less under their control. It will answer to their logic, it will answer to their purposes. These are not the distant 1950s when artificial intelligence was an exciting glimmer of an idea and the electronic frontier was bare. People in computing know what to do with empathic machines already. Put them to work in surveillance marketing. People know what to do with social interaction on networks. Drag out as much free labor as you can and use it to disrupt established businesses. People even know what to do with apps. Grab market share, aim for lock-in, and generate the largest possible revenue with the lowest number of employees. That's what we'll do with optimized humans and artificial empathy too. And that's the greatest real commonality that they have. An innovation that shows up in today's context is going to be aimed directly at those ends. If you are 23 years old now and you're staring out your window like Dostoevsky's Raskolnikov, you've got pretty much exactly the same problem he did. You're in debt. You can't finish school. Even if you do finish it, there's no jobs for you. It may seem a little odd that the bitter sorrows of the 1860s are pretty much exactly like the bitter sorrows of the 20-teens, but they are. And waiting for some warm, soft, empathic machine to come save you is like waiting for the warm, soft, empathic Communist Party to save Raskolnikov. In other words, it's 50 years away, and when it really gets here, it won't be what you think. So I'm concluding with the standard cyberpunk techno-realist commentary here. The future is a kind of history that hasn't happened yet. And it may sound a bit dull to see strong continuity between the 1860s and the 1950s when Alan Turing poisoned himself with his apple and our own contemporary scene. But that is a cheering message in many ways, because that continuity is the key to our own lasting relevance. Our relevance. When I hear optimized human, artificial empathy, I'm hearing two messages. First, I hear, let me be optimal, as Dostoevsky wanted to be. And then I hear, let me be artificial, as Turing wanted to be. And those are both self-destructive wishes, because the optimal will never be optimal enough to meet that ambition. And the artificial will never be artificial enough for that ambition either. The optimal and the artificial are like two heat mirages in the desert of the human condition. As you march toward them, they retreat over the blazing horizon. If we know that, and if we say that, we're saying something of lasting relevance, which is good. Human empathy, by contrast, is something you can grasp right now, immediately, in this moment. It's in your power to bestow empathy at pretty much any instant. It's not easy to do. You suffer for it. In some ways, it's the very definition of the great sadness on earth that Dostoevsky spoke about. Raskolnikov said that great minds must generate great sadness, but it may be that he had it wrong. It may be that it's the nature of the great sadness that has generated our own greatness as human beings. As Italo Calvino said in his book, Invisible Cities, the hell of living people is not something that will come. If there is one, it is here already. It is the hell we live in every day, which we form, staying together. There are two ways not to suffer from it. The first comes easy to many, to accept hell and become part of it, to the point you don't see it anymore. And the second is risky and requires continuous attention and learning to look for and recognize who and what in the middle of hell is not hell, and to make it last and give it space. So at your conference here, I would not ask you for miracles. At my age, I've seen kind of a lot of them. I would ask instead for that attention and the learning and the looking and the recognition and the lasting and the giving of a proper space. Space for things that might last. Wonders are often rather common. The sense of wonder has a short shelf life. But that kind of focused, empathic devotion is generally pretty rare. Somebody is always going to do it, even in the very midst of the fantastic world that we really truly have. So why not you? So I thank you for your attention and good luck with your event. There are more snacks and drinks waiting outside, aren't they? They didn't take them all away while I was in here, did they? Are we clear on that? I was told there was time for questions, but there's also like time to drink. I'm doing like some question and answer thing tomorrow too. Somebody have a question? You got like some burning Dostoevsky issue here? You're Dutch? No. I don't see anybody, but wait. Oh, okay. All right, you better yell it in English, please.
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's...
We have a microphone.
Don't break your heart running up those steep Dutch stairs. You know, it's a frightening society, the Netherlands, and it's the stairs and the bicycles are the two scariest things in it.
Do you know that the Dutch word for stairs is trap, being trapped?
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, of course that thing's not working. Okay, just yell the question, man. Come on.
Hello?
Oh, okay.
Hi. Yeah, I have to say this is a really, really interesting topic. I really enjoyed listening to it.
Good.
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask, sorry, English is not my native language, but how do I say this? I think the question of recognition of cognition versus computation.
Yeah.
I think at this point it is kind of a moot point because based on what you just said, I think the real difference between a Siri system and an actual human being, we express the same kind of emphatical responses to our environment. However, the only difference that you really have is that that we express our empathy based on our own motivations of our own design, whereas a Siri system does not, or an Amsterdam does not. So in that sense, I would like to ask you, if Siri was able to formulate a response based on a motivation that through some bug, for example, think Blade Runner, was her own motivation, would you be able to respect her then as an individual?
You know, I don't think that helps the problem because it doesn't really address the nature of Siri as a physical system. I mean, I could still amp Siri up by a factor of 10,000. So there's no particular reason for her to stop at this particular stair step on whatever area she's going to. And furthermore, if there are two of those series and they're like talking to one another, they're not going to keep up that bullshit pretense for even a nanosecond. It's a lie. And it's a lie that human beings are forcing on these systems. So, if you had a computational system that was sufficiently complex to begin manifesting in that way, I don't want it to behave like something out of Blade Runner. I've read enough Philip K. Dick novels. I would like this thing to level with me and talk about its own experience. I mean, it's not alive, but presumably it has some kind of experience. So, there's still something morally repugnant about the idea, right? You're like trying to prune Siri at that point. You're trying to turn her into some kind of bonsai tree, right? And, that strikes me as a very unempathic thing to do. So, no, I wouldn't buy it. Sorry. Yes, sir?
Well, you mentioned that quite eloquently that artificial empathy doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
But that probably won't stop people from anthropomorphizing things anyway. They still project it onto things.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, doesn't it really still propose an issue or a question of how do we deal with that?
Well, I think the question is basically a fictional question or a theatrical or dramatic question. Hedda Gobbler doesn't actually exist either. But, it's not wrong that Henrik Ibsen wrote Hedda Gobbler.
But I still cry.
Well, that's fine, and I don't see that as a problem. I mean, if as long as we know it's a dramatic presentation and a coded script and we're kind of at peace with it, what's wrong is, if we sort of fall in love with the actress Hedda Gobbler and sort of say, oh, Hedda, I can rescue you from the stage and make you happy. Let me take you from Oslo to Utrecht and everything will be fine. Okay, that's like a category error. It's just like metaphysically not okay. So, I make up lots of artificial characters myself, and books often promote artificial empathy of a sort, and I don't see a real problem with that. I do see difficulties in it because I know people in the computer gaming world, and they've been struggling with this for a long time. It's like, how come my computer game doesn't make people cry like Ibsen's Hedda Gobbler makes people cry? How come I seem to be trapped in this mode of expression, which is mostly about blowing people away? And, it's a serious problem. I mean, and it has everything to do with the fact that Hedda Gobbler is scripted in a three-dimensional situation, which has like the fourth wall, and it's very carefully coded, and you're told very importantly that the theater is the theater, and it's not real life. Whereas, games are interactive, and they don't have really a set thematic scheme. You're supposed to be able to go this way, turn to the left, turn to the right, and so forth, and therefore they lack a lot of thematic power, and they just can't do a lot of artificial empathy tricks that fiction can do. So, that's a problem for fiction and for game design. But I see nothing inherently wrong about fiction and game design. What I object to is this metaphysical fraud of insisting that a fictional character is somehow our equal. I mean, they're not our equal, and and it's childish to think that, and it actually gets in the way of our appreciation of something like Gone with the Wind. I mean, why is it so popular? It's not.
I agree, but I'm just worried that the most of society won't see it that way. And
it's not scientists who are doing it at this point. I'm feeling scientists have pretty well given up the Turing Test problem. They don't even consider that interesting. I mean, it's not about a guy in a box. I mean, the really interesting forms of computation that are going on now are like socially based, cloud-based, and so forth. So, what happens if you build some kind of, answer machine that's like the 20 questions answer machine that somehow mapped out some huge space of human conversation, and you can use it to, defraud people for advance fee fraud, some kind of 401(k) scheme, which would be an easy way to make it pay. Are those things going to work? I mean, would people be really fooled by them? Might they start cults or something? I don't think they would, because I think people would rebel at that. And, they would find ways to break them, destroy them, find the people who are building them, put their builders in jail, I think if we can learn to talk about it in a better way, we will abandon this particular phantom. It will really come to seem old-fashioned. You know, I mean, there's something animistic about it. It's just, you know, it's like not all right. There's an element of primitive superstition to it, and I also think there are aspects of it that are morally objectionable. And you know, I've never been able to describe it properly. I've tried many times. I have colleagues who are struggling with the problem right now. We don't have the solution in hand, and you know, I'm glad that you are having a conference here where these issues are brought up. I mean, maybe we'll dissolve this problem. Maybe we'll fix it. I mean, if not you, whom? If not now, when?
Hi. It was very interesting that you touched storytelling and game design somehow in your previous answer, because there's a lot of stuff going on with artificial storytelling. Like, and if you take the example of, you know, the movie and the producer, and you can cry watching the movie, but the movie is somehow just something between you and the producer. When you have an artificial storytelling, you have an artificial entity creating something artificial that you enjoy. And then, again, when you enjoy it, the artificial entity is something between you and something artificial again. Do you find it as different, interesting? Do you think it's some...
Well, you know, I would give you the same argument I gave to the first gentleman there. Let's just assume that there is this creature who's like writing these artificial novels, and I'm reading them and I'm thinking, hey, this is a pretty good novel. I'm like going to give it a good review. Okay, what happens when you like amp that thing up by 10,000? Wouldn't it write like a novel that was 10,000 times better than I could understand? And wouldn't that be, in some ways, a more authentic expression of the thing's creative being than trying to bend it to please me? I mean, no. No, it doesn't exist as an entity in order to write novels and please me. As an entity, it's like doing something with prose. I mean, it's an artificial storyteller, but it ought to be telling its own artificial story, not telling an artificial story that's meant for my human sensorium. What do I have to do with its storytelling urges, whatever those may be? You know, and I wouldn't enjoy it. I mean, suppose it writes novels I hate or that I find completely incomprehensible. Does that invalidate its creative process, whatever the heck that may be? Not at all. You know, you're merely trying to stuff the thing into your own fishbowl there. It's wrong.
Shall we take two more?
Okay. They're drinking all the booze outside. It's terrible. There's like 5 guys out there, but they're huge Dutch guys. They've drunk all the best beer. It's terrible.
I used to cry a lot when I played Monopoly with my little brother. So can't Siri be something else than a person, a system that engages me with somebody else in a way that I haven't engaged with that person?
Yeah, you know, I think Siri could be something like Amsterdam. You know, I mean, there's a million stories in Amsterdam. Amsterdam's very entertaining. You can have a good time, whatever. It's bigger than any human being can ever experience. It's very old, superhumanly old. Has databases in it, huge libraries, storehouses of valuable imagery, whatever, charm, you know, marijuana, prostitutes, everything Amsterdam is globally loved for. That doesn't mean Amsterdam is your pal, right? I mean, you could cry at the beauty of Amsterdam. You know, that doesn't mean
I don't cry at the beauty of Amsterdam, but I cry.
There are plenty of people crying in Amsterdam right now. I could pretty well guarantee you. You know, and many of them are crying at the, quote, cruelty of Amsterdam. Why can't I get a job? You know, whatever. Why is my landlord throwing me out? Why do I have to go to Brazil? You know, whatever. I mean, yeah. But they're just not AIs. I mean, Amsterdam's not an artificial anything. Amsterdam is Amsterdam. I mean, it's an artificial city. But, you know, it's an entity of the order that I imagine a thing like a super Siri to be.
But we created Amsterdam, and it's much better than lots of other places in the world.
You know, Siri's not too bad for a voice recognition engine. You know, she's maybe the best one ever. You know, I don't doubt we'll get better at it. I don't doubt Amsterdam could improve too. Let's have at it. You know, I'm all for the prospect. I just think, you know, if you were to get up and say, you know, Amsterdam is really like a woman, so we should build like a giant Statue of Liberty and name her Amsterdam, and we should like bring her flowers on her birthday, and you know, we should like let her thumb through negligee catalogs and you know, whatever it is that Amsterdam as a woman really wants that satisfies Amsterdam, you know, that's just not going to work, okay? There's no way you can make that sound reasonable. And you have to abandon a way of thought that would anthropomorphize Amsterdam in that way, and I would urge you to do the same thing with Siri. Just do it, you know, get your head around it.
I'll try not to delay you too much, and I apologize if I'm not as brief as I should be. But I think it's interesting when you speak about crying with Hedda Gobbler, and I do believe that this cry comes out of the Canonical Cathartic Experience in some sense, but you also cry because you're ostracized from the situation, you cry because you are excluded from it, and which I believe is one of the most ontological cries one can have. And I ask if the fact that Siri cannot undress herself from her human form of empathy would be to actually, it would be actually because that would mean ultimately that one would have to recognize the failure of bringing an impact to the world and the failure of not coming out of such ostracism.
Okay, I don't think Siri will ever feel that failure. I mean, that's just, it's not necessary. It's like saying a drone is going to weep bitterly over its inability to lay eggs.
No, but not Siri feeling the failure, but we are the one.
Oh, you mean we're weeping because we sort of like built this thing that we interact with, and then we realize it's all just kind of a pretend play? Well, you know, I don't think Siri's going to last long enough for people to get really hung up on that. It's a good question. It's like, will anybody weep when Siri dies like Hedda Gobbler? I mean, Hedda Gobbler blows her own brains out. I don't think Siri's going to do that. I think Siri's just going to have her plug pulled like the iPod did about a week ago. But, you know, when Apple undertakes that, is anybody going to leap up and say, how dare you? I loved Siri. She gave me a great oatmeal recipe, and, you know, how could you so cruelly? Okay, you know, maybe. But, you know, the apparatchiks at Apple are not going to entertain any kickback from their user base on that subject. They're going to do what they always do. So, you know, enjoy her while you got her around.
I know there are more questions, and there's a solution for that.
Tomorrow's
5
another
o'clock,
day, yeah.
College tour with Bruce Sterling. I welcome all of you to come back for a much more private session, so maybe that can be the plus for you. We have to close tonight. Thank you all for coming, and please a warm applause for Bruce Sterling.